Speech in 3, 2, 1. In a world that is more liberal, in a world where everyone is starting to think about more freely, more critically, activists are starting to go on the rise. And these activists sometimes are driven by moral obligation to act in ways that challenge injustice and demand change. And thus, sometimes they can commit civil disobedience, not out of malice, but out of the necessity to confront systemic oppression. And for that reason, we are proud to propose. However, we have to understand a couple of things that we need to understand. First of all is, what is a social movement in this case? A social movement is an organized effort by a large group of people to achieve a particular goal. Why does a social movement happen? It's because there's a fundamental problem in society, that fundamental problem that requires, that needs to be changed. For example, there's going to be black marching in the 20th centuries. Protests against violent sexual offenders in India happens a lot. Feminist movement, French Revolution, to take a very extreme example. So, what exactly is the aim of these people who are trying to do social movement? Is to gain awareness, to create structural change, or to create a cultural change within a society. Which, at the end of the day, protesters try to find attention from the government. At the end of the day, they're trying to find attention from the people who actually have power, who actually have the ruling ability to change things in the society, either structurally or culturally. And in this modern age, we could ask ourselves, why not through media? Well, you have to understand here that media is only gathering attention. The government doesn't necessarily listen to media, and sometimes they just do their thing without actually having to make any changes. And so what is required from these people is a more drastic approach, is an approach that is much more taking attention from the people around them. So let's take an example, for example. In Indonesia, there's the case of the I'm going to use Indonesian. Here's Indonesia tidak baik-baik saja, and it talks about it's one of the things that people did was they block these politicians to go into their meeting rooms, and because what happens? Because the government will not just listen to the people in the media. The government will want to listen to the media once people take real, more drastic decisions and more drastic actions. So, how about we take a look in times of protest? What is it exactly that the ruling class usually want? They want social stability, as in they want for the society to be able to be manageable and to be tangible. And the second is that they want to be able to legitimate the movement, which is to create so that the protest and all this chaos could at least stop and find an end to it. And this can usually either be done by negative way or a positive way. So, what is it meant by an amnesty of these of protesters can actually support these bonds of the ruling class, because they want to because an amnesty can promote the rule of law. It can encourage dialogue by not furthering tension between the people and also the ruling class, by creating a more peaceful environment, more promoting peace between those two groups. So how about we look at perhaps the context of the real world, of how amnesty and how things and how protests actually go, or social movement go in the real world. So we live in a more connected world through the internet, but in the internet, people can tell on their frustrations. Now, when people tell their frustrations, what happens is that there's going to be other people who are attracted to a certain thing. They have an agreement with a certain idea, and when they have an agreement with their idea, they're going to form a large group of people. And so these large group of people are going to form very strong opinions about something. And what they want is they want a very fundamental change. And the thing about it is that often these large group of people, let's say on Twitter, they're not taken seriously. And the reason they're not taken seriously is either because they're not noticed, because it's an issue of popularity, because people don't gain any traction in the media, because it's not what they want, or because of shadow banning, because it is precisely what the people what the ruling class does not want to hear. And so repression happens, and shadow banning and stuff. And what is required from this is that it is no longer enough just to talk about it in the media, to talk about it in Twitter, Instagram, whatever. It is more required that we take a more drastic action, more significant action that actually takes notice from the ruling class, takes notice from the people who are around us. And this drastic measure is obviously the thing that's going to be able to take attention from the ruling class and actually create change within the society, within the structure, and so on and so forth. So here I propose two BOPs. First is that civil disobedience in connection to the protests are fundamentally justified, and they have a good reason for them. And the second is that amnesty promotes change rather than not. That an amnesty can actually promote peaceful discourse that actually creates change structurally and culturally. First argument, I have bring two arguments. The first is that people commit civil disobedience for a justified reason, and the second is of the mechanism of an amnesty, and that this will create more peace within the society and actually create change structurally and also culturally. by creating discourse between the people and the government, and the ruling class. So the first argument is people commit this civil disobedience for justified reason, which is that people and the government are sort of, you have to understand that people and the government are tied in a social contract, which means that people and government, which just means that this is a very cornerstone of a democratic system or any system which promotes freedom or liberty. And this means that individuals agree to follow laws and respect the government in exchange for protection of rights and freedoms. But when people are not given these rights and freedoms, when people do not have the rights and freedoms to be fulfilled by the government, then it means that people have a right to react or break the contract in a situation in order to restore justice. So, for example, maybe let's take a look at BLM, for example, police brutality, an issue of police brutality in which people start to protest and they start to create a lot of civil disobedience. Fundamentally, it is to take attraction towards this actual issue and an actual issue that the government has been ignoring for a long time. And so they have the right to create a sort of attraction that actually restores justice and actually takes attention from the government. Now, moving on to the second argument, which is how is the amnesty going to be applied in the system? Or what is the mechanism? The difference is that we provide legal pardon towards protesters, because we have to understand, first of all, that amnesty in this case is not forgiving people who do murder, theft, or other violent actions, but rather people who commit trespassing, blocking of pathways, sit-ins, or marching. So, for example, the people of, let's say, marching, like vegan protesters, they have a certain reason to actually protest, and that is the fundamentals, that is the suffering of animals in factory cages, for example. And they're not committing necessarily horrible crimes, like they're just sitting down, perhaps marching, and it's not something that is horrible, that is not super detrimental to society. And so when protests like this occur, some law or civil disobedience happens, and protesters who commit these type of actions must be able to be pardoned. But however, it is required that people who the prerequisite of amnesty here is that these activists still have to go through the legal process. However, they aren't just tossed in a cell. Instead, they are asked about their actions, their motivations, why they do this stuff, and this creates discourse, and so that people can actually talk about why they do that stuff and why they are doing this sort of protest, and thus they can provide information to the government that the government can use to actually create change in the society. So, for example, is a TRC in South Africa in like the 1990s, where protesters, individuals who committed legally motivated crimes, are asked about their information towards the government, so that they can actually provide information to the government, and the government can actually change. And for that reason, proud to propose.